things champions and development enthusiasts. You are welcome to another episode of our podcast series to commemorate International Women's Day 2024 and indeed the month of women, which is March. My name is Agiampe Onyema. I remain your host on TalkFest. On our last episode, we talked about women in development and the contributions women are actually bringing to social change in Nigeria. One of the major conversations was how women maintain work-life balance in spite of the different hats they wear and are still able to come out tops in their workplaces. Today, we are promoting gender equality and women's rights with a special focus on political leadership. Did you catch our last episode? If you did not, hurry to our YouTube page, watch, share, and like. We have two guests contributing to women's political participation and gender equality in political leadership. To my right, we have
Bukola Idowu. I work with King Parts Development Initiative.
And on my left,
Nkiru Uzodi, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. And we know that your insightful conversations will add to this conversation. Now, let's start with Nkiru. Okay. So, Zenith Bank just recently announced that they have a female MD. And when you look at the financial sector, that's out of 25 major banks, that's making it like 10 banks that have women as CEOs. How did you feel? Because I felt, why is this happening in the financial sector and it can't happen in our political space and in governance? So can you tell us, how did you feel and what do you think are the barriers preventing women from achieving this in our political sector?
Okay. I need to clear my throat to answer that question. Thank you very much, again, and thanks for having me on today's episode. I think the news of a woman heading Zenith Bank, I think it was, wonderful news. And I think probably because, she's she's someone who is very, very experienced. If you go and do a Google search of her, she has been working in a bank. She didn't just come from nowhere. This is a woman who she has the capacity. So it's very, very, should I say, encouraging and heartwarming to see women who have worked very, very hard be rewarded in that manner. But when it comes to politics, that's not happening. And I guess that's the whole point of your question. Why is it not happening? Why are women not being rewarded with electoral victory? And for me, I would say it's because the environment is different. The complexities are different, really. So politics, I don't know, this may be an unpopular opinion, but politics or the political environment or winning elections is not 100% about merit. Or I don't think merit is the driving force. I don't think it's the main criteria. So if you go to the corporate sector, of course, I think, merit qualification, those are things that are very important. Yeah. You have to, you can't just head a bank from nowhere. You have to have experience.
And have reason, gone through the ranks.
Exactly.
Something like that.
But in politics, that's not how it is. The dynamics are different. People come into politics, through different means, and people win elections through different ways. If you listen to politicians, their stories are quite different. I'm sure we all heard about politics is local. So there are political dynamics that influence women being successful in politics. So in terms of barriers, I would say, one of the key barriers is, the stereotypes, cultural and religious stereotypes. We still have this, I think there's still this sense among many Nigerians, even among women, that leadership is meant for men. So we are really not socialized into thinking political power and political leadership belongs to women. We're socialized into thinking, it's for men. Look at when we're growing up, your class monitor most likely will be a boy, and the assistant class monitor will be a girl. Head boy and then assistant.
But didn't you think that was a way of trying to break the stereotypes, putting women as assistants, as some sort of inclusion? It may have looked funny then, but
it may have looked like you were doing balancing it like
Yeah.
a boy and a girl, but why can't the balance be in reverse? Why does it have to be the boy and then the girl, or the man and then the woman? Why can't it be the girl and then
no, I think some schools had head girl.
maybe all girls school? I went to an all girls
Okay,
school.
I did too.
Well, then let's go to university. Student union. I don't know. When you're university, did you see any female student union government president? Most of them were men, and then you
Yeah.
have the assistant who were women. So a lot of women are not socialized into power. We're not socialized into thinking, oh, politics is a place for women. So when you have those kind of should I say cultural stereotypes or ways of thinking, then it's very, very difficult for women to break through and get into politics. And of course, you have the issue of religion. There are people who still feel, women should not be, they shouldn't be seen. They should stay at home and be mothers and, take care of the homes, and all that.
I'm going to ask Bukola to jump in now,
Yes.
because as a man, do you actually feel that these stereotypes she's talking about and cultural norms have actually played into our political space and governance space?
Of course, of course. You can't rule that out. It's not even about within the governance space alone, in the political space alone. It's something also you see play out in the house. You see where they have to in some household where they need to make decisions, so they have limited finances, and somebody need to be sent to school, so they prefer to send the guy first, the
But
boy
I thought all
first.
those things are changing.
No, you still have them, because this time around it's even getting worse because of the economy. You have to make a decision. I don't have money for everybody. So just to say it goes beyond even the politics, or is something that whatever we see in the political space, in the governance space, also actually migrated from the household, from the family, from our belief, and that is what we brought in there. Now, why am I saying that? For instance, now, if in my family that is my belief, your family that is your belief, family that is your belief, and we ended up forming a political party. So what do you really expect in that party?
They'll bring all
In that
those
political party?
beliefs.
So that is family, and then this man is a religious enthusiast, and they believe that, either the the Bible or the Quran doesn't allow, the role for women is just the second place, and then we now find ourselves in governance, in political space. Just to let you know that, let's trace it down. It's not just happening over there. It's something that we brought up, and I think just like Nkiru said, basically we need to begin to look at this picture differently now. Why, she didn't really support the idea of probably the student union, you have the vice president, or the class captain, you have the vice class captain to be women. But you will permit me to say that let's even start seeing that within the political space, as bad as that is, or with no that good intention. But if you have that now in the political space, things will have changed for better. Just think about it: 19 or 18 political party, the national chairman man, vice chairman woman. Just imagine that kind
Yeah.
of, as you have now, that's only women leader.
Yeah.
Think about it, that even in the Senate, chairman of this committee man, the woman, we have that. With that, we are starting somewhere. But with what we have now, you don't even have that seeded to women. Though in our schools, in the student union, you had that seeded to women, and say, look, head boy, head girl, you have class captain, the lady will be the vice class captain. But I think if we start from there, we will go a long way,
So
because
the
what we have now is not encouraging.
So the political parties also are not playing a role in inclusion. From your conversation, that's what
That is where in fact, that is where it started from. And because don't forget the political party, they are just the manufacturing plants for what you have in governance, because that is the recruitment platform for Senate, for governorship, for State House of Assembly. So when there is no inclusion at that level, what do we expect? When women we find it difficult to get nomination form, or get nominated, even to be a delegate where you want to do indirect primaries, it's tug of war. Then what do you now expect?
So, do you think that we are having the right conversations? Are the efforts being done now and efforts being put in place? Are they going to change these stereotypes? Because cultural, you know how it is historically. Cultural norms are very difficult to
Yes.
change, and maybe another aspect we're not looking at is people are not talking enough about the economic benefits of a woman being in power. I mean, before I would say, um, Nigerians don't joke with two things: their money and power. But if we're handing over banks to women where the money is, and people are not, are feeling comfortable about it, what is stopping us from getting power? Or at least even just having, the numbers,
Yeah,
Nkiru.
it is. I still go back to what I said. The environment is not the same, and the context is not the same. And I think that's always the argument that people make. When you start talking about taking measures, maybe within political parties, to advance women in politics, because people always say, "Oh, women don't really need help. They are smart. They are doing well in banks. They are doing well in judiciary. They are doing well in this corporate sector." I feel yes, you can't really apply that logic to politics. Politics has its own rules. They have their own rules. They have. I mean, he talked about political parties. They are gatekeepers. Political parties are gatekeepers. So, and sometimes the rules are not written down. A lot of them are informal. You only find out when you get immersed in politics. That is when you find out. Political parties are gatekeepers when it comes to elections. So that's a very, very big thing. And, he talked about culture and attitude and it being difficult to change. And I agree with you there. So when you talk about barriers, there are so many. You have formal and informal barriers. So you have cultural stereotypes, you have religion. Some of those things, you can't change them overnight. So if you really want to see results and you're waiting for people to change stereotypes or culture, religion to change, nothing is going to happen. And that is why there's no change happening. So, from my own perspective, you have to do more than that. We have to do more than that, which means that the political institutions, which is the political parties, you're talking about the government, you're talking about the National Assembly legislature, they have to take deliberate action to make sure that women are running and winning. Because if you keep waiting for some of those informal barriers, cultural stereotypes, it will take time. It will take time. I'm not saying that, we shouldn't work on those issues, but they have to be complementary. So I think there needs to be that conversation because again, you mentioned, are we having enough conversation about the economic benefits of women? Yes, it is an important conversation, but it's not enough because we can be talking and then nobody is doing anything about it. And for me, that's what has been happening for a very long time. We have been talking about women participation in politics. In fact, recently I was reading about Funmilayo Ransom Kuti. She served in the parliament. I think she contested in the election. Is in the late 1950s, I think in 59, or she was appointed at some point. And if you read about her, some of the complaints she had about women being in politics, it's the same thing. The same thing.
Years after.
Yes, years after. I was fortunate to meet and speak with the late Chief Frank Afebua, the first female senator. I met with her in Benin and we had an interview. And the same thing, she was talking about money, lack of support and the rest of it. So these stereotypes, I'm just trying to demonstrate that they have been there. But so now, how do we go beyond just focusing on that? What is the solution? Again, we have to go back to political parties. They need to take very, very, very definite action. And if it means them being compelled by law to bring women out, to put them on the ballot, then I think that is what we should do. And that is the conversation we should be having.
Thank you.
I think that is what I wanted to say the other time, and I agree with him. With her, we had issues. The easiest way, because we can't legislate this attitude. You can't legislate attitude. So and that attitude has formed a barrier. The best thing to do now is let's remove this legal barrier. She used the word compel. Let's compel by law the political party. What they need to do? You know, the even in terms of the elections, in terms of and it goes a long way. So, for instance, at some point in time, the Kwara State governor, you know, Kwara State had a law that talks about 35% for women in appointive position.
Yeah.
One thing after that was in 2019. In 2023, Kwara State happens to be the state with the highest number of female in the State House of Assembly, and then followed by Ekiti. So what has happened? What is this? What really transpired? Because it shows to me that, look, even if we start with appointed position, a quota, there is a way it opened doors for other people to come in, because the opportunity for mentorship will be there for the women. They can also see how it's being played. They can, so it opened the gate wider. But if you don't open this gate for people to come in, we won't know that the women have capacity, and they have this capacity.
And I think that's what I was going to say. I think maybe that's what affirmative action does for appointive position, is that they can see women in work and in action, and you're not going to doubt it that a woman will deliver when she's doing her work. So I like you said, I think that opens doors. Can businesses and governments actually work together to promote gender equality, like come up with decisions and policies that can actually help the environment?
So for me, I think that is one thing I think is lacking in this our country. We don't have an agenda. Most institution doesn't have an agenda. I was telling somebody jokingly recently, I said, tell me like about 2 Nigerian movies you can watch that that you will introduce to your child to watch, your son, your daughter, and the boy will like, no, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an engineer. You get what I'm trying to say? You don't really find that because, well, everybody, maybe at the end of the day, maybe depending, is either we just do things.
What you mean. Like how we used to watch Ali McBeal in those days.
You understand?
I think that when you go to courts in Nigeria, it will be the same thing.
But this is where I'm going. You see, in America, some times ago, I was speaking to a particular man. He said when they grew up, there was this cartoon they watched. It shows them about Jefferson, Kennedy, Washington, and then they grew up with that because that institution built that deliberately. Now you watch American movie, you see American Commando, you want to kill, it will override, and that is
Avengers, superheroes. People want to save the world.
Yeah, that is building something in your memory. Like, these people are powerful. Now, this is what I'm now trying to say. If we have an agenda, like they have an agenda for their Hollywood, they have an agenda for politics, we should have an agenda. Now, and we should now have a meeting point, a point of equilibrium between the private sector and the development sector to get this thing done. So, you see, another thing lacking is this: you have fund, fund is there, then you now have capacity. So there can be a synergy. Why we in the civil society can make all the noise, but somebody need to provide the resources. We can show the capacity. So, for instance, now 10 banks is the heart of the economy of this country. 10 bank handed that over to female, and then we are now we now come to politics. We now say no, female should be mobilizing women to come and dance in at the campaign ground. No, come on, no. And again, when you also look at it, most of those conventions are not even successful without the input of women. But we will not be talking about putting them in strategic position to make things work. We will not be talking about a stereotype. We will not be talking about, no, we have to do something about it because we are losing a lot.
We are losing a lot. And I feel like, I even have these conversations with my brothers. They feel like men are endangered right now in Nigeria. They're like, the way women are going, they're going to take over everything. I'm like, it's not the way women are going. They're just trying to prove a point, to say, okay, we are here and we can do anything. Nobody's trying to take anything from the men. Do you feel that is one of the things?
So for me, nobody is going to take anything away from the men. Even, you see, what is the percentage? What is the data saying? You see, it's still very, very... For instance, look at the Senate. You only have 4 women out of 109. So, and then when the fourth speak there, we think, oh, they want to take over. No, what is the number? So again,
No, not at that point. At the point of emerging.
at
So-
the point of it's,
Uh-huh.
what is the number? And for me, look, as the head of an organization, one of the things you do and you look at is you don't do away with any productive staff.
Yeah.
You don't. You keep them. You find a means of keeping them. You find a means of encouraging them.
Yeah.
So in the field of sports, this country have done well when it comes to women.
Mm-hmm.
Just go and look at it. We just finished all African games now.
I saw bits of it.
Use the greater percentage of medals we won were won by women.
Yeah.
Now you look at the economy. You are handing over banks to the women. So what am I trying to say? And when you also look into the space of policy, you look into the space of human development, medicine. You see these women doing well. What should the leadership be doing? Looking at this sector, this category of people are performing well. Then you have to commit more into them to increase the productivity.
You have a
So
point,
you can't
sir.
reinvent the wheel. Commit more
Yeah.
into them to increase
Especially
that
in the
productivity.
areas you're talking about, they can be an intentional way to
It has to be
infuse more
intentional.
women.
We have to have an agenda. It has to be intentional. We can't. It's not about talking about it and then in our party we have free form. I don't know if you have heard that we have free form for women.
Yes.
That is
Somebody said is a Greek gift. If one female politician once said is a Greek gift because they give you that free form. Then when it comes to selection, they drop you off because they feel because form that is the way parties raise money. And she
It's
was
like an
saying,
investment.
exactly. So for them, they feel you're not investing. Okay, we're helping you. We're trying to look gender sensitive, but you're not even bringing money in. And you say you want to go to the House or Senate, so you're not even showing you have financial muscle. You want to come and collect free form. So that's the way some of them see that you've not invested so much and they've given you this free form. Which those things are not sustainable and they've never really helped. Most female politicians will tell you that, well, it's helpful just to an extent, but when it comes to final decision making, in terms of deciding on who is going for election, all that, whether they give you free form, all that falls by the wayside. And I just wanted to pick up quickly on the question, or the comment you made about women coming to take over. What are women coming to take over? Like, it is so ridiculous. See, women are asking for 35%. 35% is not even half. Yeah. Look, Nigeria, we need to wake up. Where countries are doing parity, 50-50, and we're still at 35. In fact, some are even saying 30.
They're already doing 50-50.
Yes.
We are asking for 35.
Exactly. And we've not even gotten there. Senegal.
Because I was going to ask that.
Senegal has a parity law. Senegal in 2010, they amended the Electoral Act and their constitution to make it compulsory or mandatory for parties to bring gender balanced candidate lists 50-50. And there are so many other countries that have that as a policy. In the national gender policy that I think the former president Buhari signed in 2021, I think his administration, they revised the 2006 gender policy. It has parity 50-50, and I'm like, okay, on paper this is fantastic, but you haven't even done 35, you've not even done 30, not to talk of 50. So for me, there's nothing women are coming to take over because, look at the statistics. National Assembly are less than 5%. At the states, you have over 990 state assembly seats, and I think with the women there are about just 56 or 55. I think there were 57, maybe one or two lost their seats, I think, but it's just 50 plus women. So it is so tiny. And I just want to bring up this concept of critical mass because sometimes people always ask, okay, so the few women who are there, what have they done? What can they do? If you are cooking a large pot of soup for a wedding for 100 people and you put a pinch of salt, how is the food going to taste?
It won't have any taste.
Exactly. So when you have 469 people, you have just 20 women. The truth of the matter is, I think people have such high expectations. What have they done? What can 20 people do? As in, like, reasonably, let's be fair. What can they do? Maybe going back to their constituencies, you can ask that question because, you own a constituency. So your duty, male or female, is represent your constituency. So if your constituency or constituents come and say, oh, this man or this woman didn't do anything, that's fair enough. But as a group, maybe you come to the National Assembly as a group and you say, oh, what have these 20 women? What can they do? See, I have, my organization will work with National Assembly, and I've seen committees where you don't have women. And they do oversight. And, you hear women groups talking about gender-based budgeting or inclusion or making budgets inclusive. How can you talk about inclusion when an oversight is going on, or conversations are going on between MDAs, that's the executives, and committees, parliamentary committees, and you don't have women, and there's exclusion. You don't have anybody who will bring those unique views. So this
That
is
perspective.
exactly, you can't even bring perspective. So in fact, for me, this whole idea of taking over is not even going to happen. They should see, we have reports backing it up. World Economic Forum, they always release this annual global gender gap reports, and they said it's going to take over 100 years to close the gender gap in politics, and this is even globally. If you now narrow it down to Nigeria, the statistic is even worse. So anybody who thinks women are coming to take over in politics, it is not backed by any evidence. In fact, the numbers are getting worse. And let me tell you, if anybody thinks it's not possible, the way we are going, we'll wake up one day after election and there will be no woman in the National Assembly. It is a possibility.
So, Nkiru, for me, if this conversation of taking over, I think I've had that conversation with someone. See, if you are going to take over, take over. If you are going to take over, inflation will come back to single digits. I beg, take over. You are going to take over.
As long
Maternal
as
mortality rate will come down.
there's
You know,
evidence.
you understand. So
Performance.
if you are performing, I mean, that is, see, we should not, and that is the thing. I don't think it's about taking over in terms of number. I think some people are just afraid of the capacity women are bringing on the table.
That's possible.
And I think that is one of the issues. You see, that insecurity, and that is the main thing. So because this is where you keep wondering. I have seen 2 or 3 successive presidents in this country handing over Ministry of Finance to women, and they did well. So what are we trying to talk about? So if this thing is being productive, let's stick to it. Nobody change a winning team. We should even encourage that. So this idea of they are taking over is not backed by statistics, and even if you look at it logically, if it's giving us results, women take over.
Yeah, so are there lessons from some of these countries that we can share? Like, are there things that people have done that we can begin to do in Nigeria that have brought successes in these countries? Like, we talk about Senegal and 50-50 parity.
Yes.
What did they do? How did they achieve it? You know, things like that. And we may not even have the same background, because Nigeria, I think one of our issues is the multicultural nature of the country. We are very diverse. We're talking earlier about my state from Cross River. There are over 20-something languages spoken. So from one, I'm telling you, from one place to the next one, they don't speak the same thing. But they are probably, you just use your leg to cross over. So Nigeria is that diverse. And sometimes we might be thinking things are not working because we're not putting in enough. It may just be that we are not applying the right strategies. So what are some of these things that have worked in these other countries that we can begin to put together in Nigeria?
Honestly, I have just one answer. And for me, that is affirmative action and special measures. So there have been, I'm not saying that's the only recommendation or solution. So other countries, there are several methods they've used to encourage women, to contest. And for instance, in countries where political parties are very developed, they actively recruit women. In Nigeria, political parties are not developed. So I think a lot of Nigerians, in fact, the average Nigerian doesn't even understand the concept of political party or what a political party is meant to be doing. For most of us, it's just a vehicle for winning elections. A political party is not meant to be active only during elections. They're actually supposed to be active around the clock, like around the election cycle. So after elections, they're supposed to be that is what happens in advanced countries. They actively recruit women. They go around registering women, getting female membership, and they do training and capacity building for women. But in Nigeria, it seems as if the whole idea of capacity building and training for women has been left to civil society organizations, donors, NGOs, and to the women themselves. I stand to be corrected, but most times when female politicians talk about, it's usually external organizations. But it should actually start from the party. So you really don't see that happening. And, that is, you can't really ascribe that to just, the gender disparity. So it has to do with the larger problem, that political environment of having political parties that are not well developed. So that's one thing that you see in those countries. And then secondly, mobilization of women, in every country where women succeed in elections, they have very, very strong women activist groups. But for me, the most significant factor, or the most significant, shall I say, method or approach, is the use of temporary special measures or affirmative action measures. Honestly, if you do the research, all the countries, or almost all the countries, who occupy the top positions in the rankings for women in parliament, have one type of special measure. Some of them are legislated, some of them are not. So South Africa, for instance, I think is in the top 10 or top 15. I can't remember exactly now, but they are quite high. They have more than 40% of women in their parliament. They don't have a legislated quota. They have a voluntary party quota in the ANC. Of course, the ANC is the ruling party. And that's because they have a very strong party system. So the party is very progressive in terms of women issues. Of course, South African constitution, we all know they have one of the most progressive constitution in terms of women's rights. So within their party, they make it a point of duty to nominate women. Then you now have countries like Rwanda, Kenya, where the quotas are legislated. You understand? It's written down in their constitution. But if you really look around, they all have some kind of measure, that is prescribed, where parties are compelled. I talked about Senegal. Senegal has 50-50. If they don't bring candidate lists, if parties bring candidate lists that don't show gender balance, the Electoral Commission can reject the list. Of course, that's not applicable here because INEC is not allowed to reject candidate lists from political parties. So, again, we can use those countries as models while also tweaking it.
Why are they not allowed? It's simply because the law does not allow them.
The law doesn't allow it, and there's a reason for that. So the point I'm just trying to make is that, whatever it is, of course, we have to make it to fit our own context, because there's a reason why political parties don't want INEC rejecting party lists. And then again, another thing is they're also incentives. So for me personally, I feel, and I don't know, people may disagree with me, but I feel political parties in Nigeria don't really have the incentive to nominate women. Seriously, I don't think they do. And the reason why I say it is an incentive for politicians, the electoral victory. If you keep bringing male candidates and you keep going to elections and you keep winning, why should I bring women? Why?
Okay, so for them, that's their winning team, so they can't change them.
Maybe. Why? Do you understand? So why? Because you are not punishing them. But in some of these countries where the law says you must, they know, okay, one, I have to obey the law. And then in some countries, some political parties, you see, this gender thing it cuts across. So even in advanced countries, some parties still want to beat the law, but then they attach penalties. So for instance, there are countries where they give political parties subventions. So they attach it as an incentive. If you bring so and so percentage, or if you meet the threshold, you get incentive, in terms of maybe funding, like they give them maybe some kind of grants or something, public grants. But all those things don't exist here. So for me, it has to be incentivized, meaning the parties should be encouraged in some way. Of course, they have their own role to play in-house, but they should have that incentive. That's one. And then secondly, if you have some kind of legislation or measure that is written down in law, and they know, okay, this thing has created a right or has created a duty on you, and I have a duty to do this. If I don't, the woman can go to court and sue. So that's the way it works. So if there's nothing compelling them and they feel they can get away with it, then they're not going to really put much effort into it.
Let me come back to Bukola. In what way do you think that male allies can contribute to promoting gender equality? I mean, we have people we call he for she, and male champions these days promoting gender equality. In what ways do you think?
Well, I think that has proven to be very effective, if you ask me, because I have been in meetings where decision were to be taken, and women will say, no, that is not gender balance, and then all the men will look at them, you've come again, you activists. But I have also been in meetings where when men raise that thing, other men say, oh, that is true. So they don't see it as if it's coming from. So I think we have to be deliberate here and create that role, give them that opportunity, more men to begin to speak up, irrespective. But let's understand that role. It's a strategy. Because while we are working on women issue, most places are spoken, men are spoken. In fact, we got to one state house of assembly, and the speaker said, "You guys come." He was talking to us man to man. What do you see on women issue that you are doing this? But
don't you have female children?
yes, so these are the issues. So because at that time we can connect.
Yeah.
Because in quotes now, we are the perpetrators. So if we are talking to ourselves, it's much more effective, because when you are talking as a female, they see it as okay, activist, So I think that have to be create more men we have to be
Speak up.
we have to speak up. We have to be deliberate about that.
Yeah.
And like I said the other time, let's come back to the issue of private sector, the people in the private sector, even development space, or maybe international NGOs, donors. Is there a way we can work together and provide that incentive for women who have been able to win, or even political party? And I keep saying this. Nigeria is one country that people, the best way you see yourself as non-partisan is that you are not supporting any political party. That is not what we are talking about. If a political party has done well, how do we support them?
Yeah.
That become an incentive for them too. You understand? Oh, you've done well. Maybe you've had like about 10 female elected from your political party. So how do we support them? And cut across, we can even extend that to any either technical support, whatever support we have to give them. We have to stay with the women, even while they are in the office. We have to support them. Now, again, the other thing I need to say is that we also have to look at gender sensitive reporting from the media. Is holistic, because like I said, some of the journalists also have this bias from their family. So when you now see headlines, when you see reportage, most of the times they are not gender sensitive, they are not gender balanced, they are stereotype. You understand? So when a man comes into a particular position, you don't talk about capacity. Then when it is a woman, you now begin to ask, how do you cope?
The last Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, when what do I call it?
Yeah,
now?
that issue
when
happened.
the issue happened, people were sharing messages of 3 women: the past minister, the director, and herself.
So that
saying, apart from them being women, they all went to federal school. So I saw it on my my secondary school group.
But
people were offended.
That is what gender sensitive reporting can do, because look at how you now begin to stereotype and say, look, oh, they are women. But look into this. Let's go back to this country. And EFCC.
Name the
list
top
of
10 corrupt officers. A woman's name probably
top
won't
10.
be there.
We are talking what EFCC released, that the cases they want to reopen. First 40, women are not there. So these are the issues. So we have to also look at, and that is, we extend our advocacy to the media, because they need to represent very well. But it's very, very important that we have this conversation and then go back to family re-engineering. Don't go and say, oh, this is men's job, this is women's job. You understand that when it comes to cooking, female should go to the kitchen and cook. No, let's go back there, because this family, that is where it starts. This is where it starts.
Interesting you mentioned that, because that seems to be a very hot topic these days among the younger population. This cooking thing or not cooking thing, it's a very, very, and I'm very happy to hear you talk about it. And mention the importance of male allyship, because some of these things, if it's a woman saying all these things like, oh, you're trying to be rebellious, or you're a cultural deviance, I don't know. But I think, that male allyship is very, very important. And it's important to have men also having these conversations and contributing to these conversations, because that's also one of the ways, these other countries have achieved some kind of parity. Got to where they are, they had men
working with them.
Yes, working with them and spoke up for the issues.
And that's why we had to have Bukola, because he's a renowned he or she. And thank you for bringing your perspective.
You can imagine that my daughter cannot be the president of this country,
Exactly.
cannot be the governor of this country, not because she doesn't have capacity, not because she can't win an election, but because she's a woman.
Yeah.
No.
And I think that's
No.
where I wanted to close it by saying there's a role for everybody. We've heard it. Whether you're a man, woman, there's something for you to do to promote gender equality. You can't go and be telling your kids that you can be everything, but not president or minister, or you just can be part of political leadership. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to end here. The conversation was just getting heated, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. I remain your host, Agyampe Onyema. Thank you.